more that you read, the more things you'll know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to read. Reading has the power to open our eyes, open our hearts, and truly transform us. Bismillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Muslim Bookshelf. I am your host, Naima B. Robert, and I'm super excited about the guest that I have for you today. Today's show is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be taking you back, way back, and we're going to be sitting down with a brother who has been creating content for children in the community for over 20 years. Brother Khaleel Muhammad, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, mashallah. Khaleel Muhammad is a bit of an all-man. Some people might say a renaissance man. I sing, I paint, I write, I design. Allah has blessed me with a lot of gifts, with a lot of talent, and I try to use those talents for the sake of Allah, to improve mankind, to spread the deen of Islam, and to make the world a better place. And some people think that's a naive notion, but I tend to think it's a very noble cause. It's something that we should strive to try and do and be better people and create a better world. If not, we're not on earth for that reason, then why are we here? My writing endeavors are a natural consequence and derivative of my nasheeds and my painting and illustration. It's about conveying the message of Islam in a different format as opposed to singing or being on stage. It's a way to create fictional stories, to put Muslim characters in different situations, whether it's science fiction, whether it's street life, whether it's different scenarios that people can relate to, and then show how people react and how they practice Islam in different scenarios. So that's really what I wanted to do as a writer, to convey these stories in a way that would be kind of entertaining and interesting and less preachy. I'm driven by the desire to create excellence as much as possible. Everything I do, whether it's the radio show, whether it's a TV presenting, whether it's a fundraising, whether it's illustrating, writing, singing, I try to do the best that I can do, try to be the best person that I can be in that particular field. I want to improve myself. I want to be an example for kids to say, look, if he can do it, I can do it. Because I'm coming from a very, very humble background. And I feel that if I'm able to achieve something, and if I can inspire the next generation to achieve something even greater than myself, I think I would have achieved something. What inspires my art style, my writing style? It's Marvel, simple as that, I can't help it. When I was growing up, we were infected by the Marvel bug very, very early, since I was 6 or 7. I've always been interested in superheroes, science fiction, fantasy, that sort of stuff. So I try to recreate those kind of scenarios. I try to recreate those stories, but within a Muslim fold, if you like, or with a Muslim flavor. And that's really what inspires me, seeing amazing artwork, seeing digital work, seeing beautiful architecture. That is the kind of thing that really inspires me. Growing up, my favorite comic book character was not Batman, it wasn't Spider-Man, it was the Black Panther, just because I thought his costume was so cool. And it's really interesting that they've brought him into the MCU at the moment in the films, and he's one of the main characters. Unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman passed away, but he used to be my favorite character. But today, my favorite character would be Batman. To have an alternative for Muslim children is it's so important, because at the end of the day, all media, all art, it's vying for the hearts and souls of people. It's trying to get your attention, it's trying to show you something. And if the message behind what they're trying to show you is counterproductive to what we represent as Muslims, then we're going to be in trouble. So if we don't have something that's going to counterbalance that narrative, then we're going to get eaten, basically. We're going to be in a lot of trouble. Our kids are going to go a lot more way astray than they already are. So we need to give them alternate music, alternate art, alternate comics, alternate stories, alternate TV stations, etc., for us to even begin to try and combat a multi-billion-dollar industry that is already targeted our children. For me, next in the author space, I have a project called Deen Teen 5. It's 5 Muslim superheroes. They don't have powers, but they have gadgets, and they go to an academy and they discover that they gain these abilities. And it's something I've been working on for the last 23 years or so. So that's a book I want to develop. Whether I will or not, whether I live long enough to finish it, I don't know. But that's something I'm looking forward to doing, Deen Teen 5. If you're a young child and you want to get into comics, the first thing you have to do, you have to know who the greats are, who Jack Kirby is, who Stan Lee is. You need to know who John Romita Jr. is. You need to know who Carmen Infantino is. You need to know who Joe Tasker is. You need to know who John Byrne is. You need to know who all these artists are so that you can see what they've done in order to stand on their shoulders and do something even more amazing. It's pointless you just go into an industry and you know nothing about it. The standard of art and writing that the comic world has produced is par excellence. And even though sometimes the subject matter may be contrary to Islam, what we should be looking at is the level of excellence that they've managed to attain. That is what we should be aiming for. We use our stories, use our narratives, but we try to get to that level of excellence, of professionalism. That is what we should be trying to attain, and that's what we should be aiming for.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Already?
Yes, and I'm going to ask you, for those who are watching who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
Bismillah, I'd say that I'm a creative person. I started in Muslim media 97 actually, 97, where I produced an audio cassette called The Adventures of Hakim. Sent it to my brother Yusuf Islam at the Mountain of Light. They liked it so much that we recorded it professionally. And then from there, I worked for him for 3 years. I did backing vocals. I did a lot of his designs, CD covers, book covers, posters, etc., etc. Then after that, in 2003-ish, I was signed by a record label called Meme Music, and I toured. I toured France. I went to Sweden 3 times, Germany 3 times, Malaysia, South Africa, America, Canada. At that point, obviously, the Nasheed industry was very young.
Yes.
And people were hungry for Nasheed. Yes. So we had a great opening in that respect, that people were very receiving and very much interested in seeing what was happening with that scene. And then after about a couple of years of that, I mean, I started my creativity before I was Muslim in the arts. You know, I was a commercial illustrator and a graphic designer. So I had those skills, and I felt I wanted to express those skills and use them for the deen. So while I was doing some of the Nasheeds, I kind of went back to the thing that started me in the business, which was the audio cassette, The Adventures of Hakim, and turned that into stories and started to write stories for children. And then things just went sideways, and I started hosting a lot of events for Muslim Hands. I started to do a radio show for Inspire FM in Luton. So I've even done a bit of, what I'd say 98% of what I do is for Muslim kids. But I do a little bit of commercial work where I've been in films like Cinderella. I've been in films with Ryan Reynolds. There's a film called The Woman in Gold. I'm in that film as an extra. I've been on screen with Ian McKellen.
I'm sure the viewers didn't know this. So this is like the secret history of Khaleel Muhammad, mashallah.
So I've done a lot of creative things, but my main focus is Muslim children, inshallah, and teens now, and teens.
And teens. Why did you make that your focus? What's the big deal?
The big deal, I mean, I've always had an affinity with kids. Kids have always liked me, and I've always liked kids. I've always been able to kind of create an immediate bond with kids, and kids always look for me and crave my attention. So I've always been like-minded with kids. I've always kind of understood kids, plus the fact that I grew up reading Marvel comics. Marvel, not DC, let's not get it twisted, right? Oops. Marvel comics, right? Okay,
let's just press the pause button right there, okay? Marvel versus DC. Break it down.
Well, Marvel Comics, of course, Marvel Comics started back in the 1940s as timely comics, and they had simple characters like the Submariner and Human Torch and Captain America. And then some years later, DC Comics started, Direct Current or Detective Comics, DC, depending on which position you take, they started making comics likewise.
Right.
They already had Superman since 1938, and 1936 they had Batman. So they had that, but they were bubbling in the background. But in the 1960s, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and John Romita Jr. and artists of this nature began to reinvigorate the superhero genre.
Right.
So they introduced Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, Thor, the X-Men for a new generation.
The ones that people kind of hear about now and not familiar
the Incredible
with.
Hulk, X-Men, Daredevil, the ones that people see on the cinema now. So this is back in the 60s, and that's when my brothers and sisters, my brothers particularly, were in Jamaica, and they came over and they were reading these comics, and they introduced myself and my other siblings to that.
Right.
And since then, we've been mad about Marvel Comics.
Right. What is it? Okay, so I'm curious about this because I think that it's very common. It's obviously a huge thing to be into comics, to be inspired by comics. You know,
It is now. Back in the day, it was frowned upon. If you were reading a comic, they all thought you were a kid. Yeah. Yeah, if you were reading a comic as a grown man, you'd be frowned upon.
No, that's very true. That's very true. But the fan base, obviously, is something that's continued to grow. Yeah. And I think there's always something to be said for cultural moments that stick, right? There's something about superheroes, right?
Yes.
What is it that makes... Or is it superheroes themselves? Or is it the way that they've done superheroes that makes them so compelling?
Well, one, people always want to be better than they are.
Okay.
People always, maybe it's part of the fitra, that people aspire to look to others, to save them in some sense, or to be a role model in some sense. And in the absence of organized religion, with secularism making its way into Western countries and other religions kind of coming down a bit, something has to replace that, because man will still have a desire to worship something.
The craving for something higher.
Yes. So I think superheroes, and I hear this kind of sentiment more and more now, that superheroes are filling that gap, that God-shaped gap, if you like, where superheroes are those deities, if you like, where this is where DC and Marvel depart, because DC characters are more godlike. You have Superman, who represents Zeus. You have Wonder Woman, who represents Helena of Troy and these things, and Flash is Mercury. Yeah. Batman is like the devil. But Marvel comics...
Excuse me, what? Batman is the devil?
Batman is, yeah, he's a devil, but he's like a small shaitan.
So this is, okay, as you can tell, I'm not Marvel or DC. I have a general working knowledge, but hold on, how is Batman the devil? I don't get
because every human being has a dark side.
So he's the shadow.
He's a shadow.
Right.
Superman is the pinnacle. Wonder Woman is the pinnacle of...
Is the dichotomy between Superman and Batman, as in the light and the shadow self?
Yes, yes. But the reason...
But Batman is also a hero.
That's what I was going to say. But he has to be a hero for our own sense of self, because we don't want to condemn ourselves to the pit of the abyss. Okay. So we still look at those redeeming qualities. Yes, he's broken. He's had a tragic upbringing. Obviously his parents were killed when he was young, and it traumatized him. Yes. But there's still a glimmer of hope in him, and he refuses to kill. He has a code of conduct.
He chooses a different way.
He chooses a different way, a path which he would consider to be righteous. We would consider him to be an out-and-out vigilante, who was taking the law into his own hands, but he's painted in these kind of heroic tones where he's looked upon as he's got a dark side like the rest of us, but yet there's something
he's harnessed
noble
that
about
for
him.
Good.
Yes.
Because when he fights baddies, I mean, they're real baddies.
Yes.
I mean, the Joker and Penguin, and those are the guys who do the evil stuff.
Those are the irredeemable aspects of human character.
So then is Superman morally inferior then because he's just good and he doesn't have a shadow self and he doesn't have any demons of his own?
Well, Superman started that way. But because of the influence of Marvel Comics, the way they start to portray superheroes as human, those kind of sentiments, those kind of feelings have kind of gone over to Superman, where Superman has to be depowered.
More human.
Yeah, he has to be depowered. They can't make him as powerful as he used to be. He has human problems. He has human issues with his wife, with, identity conflicts, and then, having a wife and then having kids and bringing up kids. And so they've tried
Sounds really boring,
to humanize it.
I'm not interested in Superman as a dad. Like, no, well, you're supposed to be doing this.
He does do that, but if you've seen the new... for years, Superman has been married, and he's had kids.
To Lois Lane?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Well, in one version, yes. The other version, he's married to Wonder Woman. Anyway, but Superman, Superman is meant to be the pinnacle of human nobility, if you like. Right. So he's the one that we aspire to, but in reality, in practical terms, Batman is... That's why I think Batman is probably the second most popular character ever, just below Spider-Man.
At least I got that right.
Yes.
At least I got that right. So this may seem like an absolute tangent for the viewers. They're like, why are these two here chopping it up about superheroes when this is
the thing.
This is the Muslim book
jam,
right?
That's why.
But this is the point, right? Is that I know that within the Muslim literary space, or even just the Muslim parenting space, there has been a conversation about children, Muslim children, looking up to superheroes, looking up to Spider-Man, wanting to be Batman or whoever, have powers like this one or that one. So firstly, do you think that it's a misplaced concern? And secondly, do you think that Muslims are right to try to compete with those superheroes through our own comics and our own kind of media. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's not for me to tell a parent how to raise their kids or what they think their kids may be sensitive to because they know their child. And if they feel that their child is losing their dean because they're following Superman or Batman or watching a Flash film or something, then by all means they need to take steps to sort of to deal with that in a way that is suitable for that child. But overall, generically speaking, I would say it's never caused a problem with me. You know, I've never confused. I know this is fiction. Right. And I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the truth and Islam is the truth. So for me, maybe because I'm an adult, but even I grew up with this stuff and my son grew up with this stuff and it hasn't affected his tawheed. So I think we need to give kids a bit more credit. You know, they're not as simple as we paint them to be sometimes. They can discern between fiction and non-fiction. And I think human beings have been able to do it from time immemorial. So that's my overall statement on that particular topic there. But individually speaking, parents have to look out for their own. If they're spending an inordinate amount of time on comics or films, then of course, that's an issue of concern, and that goes with anything. They can be on the Xbox too long. So that's the point that needs to be addressed there. Regarding whether we should replace those heroes with Muslim superheroes, why not? I don't see why not, because we're in a culture that is steeped in that kind of folkloric storytelling of superheroes. And it's part of the background, it's part of the wallpaper now. So to sort of try and cut it out of their lives, it's going to be nigh on impossible. So why not substitute those particular heroes for superheroes that have the virtues and the values that we cherish? Whether they wear masks, whether they have powers. Because my heroes, the ones I create, don't have powers.
Talk to us a little bit, because let's obviously you're here on the Muslim bookshelf because you've written some books, which is a good thing, right? But you've got. Let's have a look at this one here.
Muslim All-Stars.
Talk to us about the Muslim All-Stars.
Muslim All-Stars. Basically, the kids are almost like Scooby-Doo.
Okay. It's giving Scooby-Doo vibes, definitely. I see that, mashallah.
The difference is that, well, maybe not the difference, because in Scooby-Doo, they don't fight as well. But these characters, they don't get into fights. They don't get into car chases. They don't do anything. Everything is cerebral. Everything is talking things out, reasoning things out. In this particular book, the second book in the series, they come across blatant racists who are dressing up as movie characters and desecrating places of worship. And at some point there is a physical meeting of those two parties, but there's no fighting. So they solve problems by thinking about it, speaking to people, sitting them down and discussing it. So they're just regular kids, you know, who like football, who you know, play Xbox and what have you. So that is what the Muslim All-Stars kind of address. And again, my books, for the most part, don't necessarily deal with small kids. The colouring book does. But the other books, this one, Raheem and the Robot, and the other ones I'm working on.
It's more of a middle grade. It's a middle 8 to 14-ish. Exactly. It's more primary school. This is primary, early high school. I've
noticed a bit of a gap in the market. It's great that we've got little books with kiddies. You know, what do you say when they go to Auntie's house? We say Bismillah, we eat. And I went to Auntie's house and she gave me a big part. That's great. But I still think that we're missing out that part of the market, the demographic of our community that need it as much as anybody else, because they're the ones that are more likely to be exposed to social media, exposed to Islamophobia, and they need to be able to see those role models, see those representations of themselves in a normal setting. However, it also may be a bit more adventurous, a bit more edgy, because
it needs to be. It needs to be, because that's something that we know from as children develop through from early sort of preschool, early readers. The longer the books are, the more complex the characters need to be, the more complex the plots need to be, and the more complex just the situations at hand, right? And I always think of the types of books that children of that age are reading. And you're right, there is this huge gap. You have 9-year-olds reading Harry Potter, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. Harry Potter's a massive book. I'm not saying we should have a Muslim Harry Potter, but where is the Muslim book that draws kids in and keeps them tied into that story, caring about those characters, not able to go to sleep until they finish the book for 300 pages. We're yet to get there. I think we're yet to get there. But this is a fantastic step in that direction.
I think so,
How has the response been?
For a while, it was a bestseller on Amazon.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was. Well, hey,
mashallah. No, that is very good.
So that was good for a while. And but as I said, it's my second book, so I'm pleased with it at the moment. So it's done quite well. Again, I wanted it to, because I designed the whole thing. I didn't illustrate it, but I designed the book as well. And I wanted it to look like a mainstream comic or a mainstream book. I didn't want it to look like some sort of specialized niche production. I wanted to make it look like it could fit in any way. And bearing in mind my roots and my upbringing through Marvel, even the cover is a replica of a Marvel comic.
It does.
Where you've
I
got
can see that.
The image there and the thing across here. That's exactly how the old Marvel comics used to be. So that's a tip of the hat to that as well. So I'm trying to make it look as mainstream as possible, because our kids have that appetite now, and they expect and they deserve to have something that is really good.
It's interesting, actually, because I think, you know, sort of maybe a generation ago, there was a desire to keep Muslim children away from mainstream entertainment. And so things like, you know, Adam's World, and, you know, people didn't show their kids Sesame Street. They had Adam's World instead. And there were quite a few. And you've seen sort of dotted here and there, you'll see a few coming out. But I think the jury's probably out, but I do think that battle has been lost. In the sense that people don't do that anymore. They're not.
There's a few 3D animation. There's one.
No. What I mean is, people are not trying to keep their kids away from.
Oh no, yes, I agree.
Mainstream entertainment anymore, because they realize they can't. In the sense that if you have screens in your house,
it's going to happen.
It's
going to happen.
Right?
Plus, I think people have come to terms with the idea that it's not as poisonous as they, you know, may initially have thought. Even with my kids, when I was bringing them up, we didn't watch. We had a TV, but we never plugged it in. So they didn't get exposed to a lot of stuff until they were maybe in their, you know, 12s age sort of group as well. So, but once they were exposed to it, then you realize that it's not as. I have to be careful. It's not as bad as we thought it was. It's not going to change them into another person. I mean, it has the potential to do so. With the lack of parental control. If the parents aren't hands-on, they're not aware of what they're consuming, then of course there's going to be a potential.
I think you picked up on something important there. And I think it's when we as Muslim parents put our heads in the sand, we stick our heads in the sand, and we turn a blind eye to what our kids may be watching or reading, etc. As in like, oh, I can't do anything, just, you know, whatever. Two things happening. One is that you've shown disdain for what your child's interested in. You're not interested. It's nonsense. It's rubbish. What is this rubbish that you're watching? What is this nonsense that you're playing? You know, that kind of attitude. So you've removed yourself from that space. But also, you can't connect with your child over that thing anymore. So there isn't an opportunity for open discussion and dialogue. And
because the gap is widening,
Right? And you know, if you've watched the series, or if you've watched the movie, or you've read the book, you and your child can have a conversation about that. And if there was anything in it that is problematic, or that you want to see, sort of, where is my kid with this, you can have that conversation. But if you've just dismissed it and said, oh, you know, it's a waste of time, nonsense, whatever, do that, but I don't approve, you've shut that door. And now your child is in that space without your guidance, without you being aware of even what's going on. What do you think? Do you think that
I think that's absolutely true. You know, they're not doing themselves any favors by having this hands-off approach. And it can be down to a bit of laziness. And because people are busy, they have lives, they have bills to pay. And I understand that, totally get that. But they still have to get into the game. If they're concerned about it, they have to put some effort in. If you really want your kids to grow up with Tawheed and, you know, the values that we hold dear in Islam, you're going to have to put the work in. It's simple as that. It's just not acceptable for you to complain all the time and blame the kuffar, and then, you know, and you not have to do anything about it, or you have a very cursory connection or discussion with your kids about what they do. No, take a real interest in what they're talking about, because kids, you know, they're very ingenious. They're going to find that they're going to consume the product some way, shape, or if they've got a phone and it hasn't got parental control in it, there you go.
Even if they don't have a phone, they probably have access to someone else's phone when they go to their friend's house or whatever. No, you're right. And I think, I have to say, I do think that moving forward, especially with the interconnected world that we live in, the type of control that parents had a generation ago, maybe even when our children were young, the kind of, the bubble we could keep them in, I don't think exists anymore, really. For most people, it's just something that's not doable. But I think moving forward, what we need to equip our children with is critical thinking skills and the ability to discern. discernment is what they need. They need to know the deen, like you said.
Yes.
They need to understand, well, what is tawheed? So they
Yes.
can discern when something is in opposition with it.
Yes.
They need to understand, you know, what Allah wants, to discern when something is against that or calling them away from
Yes.
that.
Yes.
More than protecting them from the haram, they have to be able to discern
Yes.
and make a choice for themselves.
Yeah, it may involve having those painful conversations where
We needed painful conversations across the board about everything.
Yeah, and you know, something that I kind of came to my understanding years ago when I was doing Nasheed and I started to go into the field and perform. And I realized a lot of kids don't understand what Islam is, or they believe a lot of folkloric cultural stuff is
Really?
Islam. So sometimes the Nasheeds in itself is a form of dawah to ourselves, to kind of fill up some of those gaps, because I had some strange things. You know, if I fall asleep and my breath goes to Mecca and I wake up and I'll be dead before that. I was like, stuff like this coming out. So I think, so there's a real, you know, need for education in the community ourselves. Parents as well as kids have to sit down together and discuss what's happening now. What is on social media? What do you like? Why don't you like it? What, you know, what's going on in school? What are your mates doing? Sort of things like that.
We can't afford to do the hands-off parenting.
The hands-off thing is it's done. Yeah, if you're doing that now, you're not doing yourself any favor whatsoever.
No. And our children need us to be connected.
Yes.
You know, and you know, a huge part of this show, obviously, there will be so many parents, more parents probably watching, but you know,
online as well. Yes.
And then the kids are doing their own thing. But I'm hoping that the hope is that we can raise awareness and conscientize. Muslim parents can't afford to be complacent. And I know that it's hard.
Yes.
And I know that's not what we want to hear. Because what we want is ease.
Easy life. Easy life. It's not going to happen.
We want ease. We want to chill a bit. We want to take it easy. But subhanAllah, I always remember the saying from Imam Ahmad and his son, the conversation between Imam Ahmad and his son, where, you know, they're going through so much in the dawah, they're going through so much with the king and the court and the this and the that, prison and all of this. And his son says to him, "Yeah, Baba, like, father, when will we ever relax? When will we get some ease?" And Imam Ahmad said, "When we take those first steps into Jannah."
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, it's a constant battle.
We're not living in those times, but we kind of are living in those times. You know, it's one of those things. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. As Muslims, we have a mission. We have a mission for ourselves. And
we don't want to paint it as doom and gloom, because I mean, I've seen some of the guests you've had on the show, and in general, if you go on Instagram, there are a wealth of amazing Muslim authors out there.
Of course.
So it's not as if like it's a desert and there's only one or two. There's quite a lot.
No. There's
a
tons.
lot of
There's
amazing.
tons.
So there's no excuse to say, oh, I can't find anything. You
No. This one there,
you'll find tons
no one's
of
going to
amazing
accept
stories.
that for sure. This is, I think, sorry if I came across as a bit sort of nihilistic or something. No, it's more a case of roll your sleeves up. We need to be okay with rolling our sleeves up and getting stuck in there. You know, read the books, research the books, have the difficult conversations, connect with your kids. You know, listen to them, share with them. Like that kind of skating along parenting thing. It's not, like you said, we're not doing ourselves any favors. And also, there's so much joy in that hard work because you know your intention. You know what it's for. This book, I'm sure, didn't take you a week to put together. Or did it? I hope not. Did it take you a week?
No, it didn't. No.
How long did it take you to put the book together?
A couple of years. Couple of years,
right?
Yeah, easily.
Was it worth it?
Yeah, definitely, yes. And the reaction I've gotten from it as well, and the kids that love it, parents that love it, great reviews on Amazon. Yeah, of course, it's definitely worth it. And it, again, it's filling a need, you know. Kids want stuff that aren't too babyish, but they don't want heavy, hardcore stuff either. They want something in between. Something that is similar to what they're already reading. Something similar to, I don't know, Famous Five.
It's like a halal version of the stuff they like. Because there's stuff that there are universal values, right, that you find in all stories, comics, mangas, everything, right? You're going to find universal stuff that everybody is agreed. This is a good thing, right? This is a heroic nature. This is a test. This is a trial. This is a failure.
But I don't think a lot of parents or people, I don't think they get that discernment.
Oh, okay.
They think if it's not Muslim, then it's wrong. And we shouldn't take any examples from it. Which obviously I don't have that opinion at all. If it's good, it's good. Maybe some of the nuances or some of the messaging may be a bit dodgy, but in terms of production, in terms of the work ethic, in terms of how they get things done, that is what we should be striving for. And it's a shame that a lot of people have seen, oh, it's the kuffar, we have to just leave all that stuff, do our own thing. Why can't we have our own thing? And because we don't, we have got our own thing. We have got our own thing. We just have to package it in a way that is attractive to an audience that are already steeped in that culture. So you can't reinvent the wheel and expect everyone to jump on it. You do something totally different outside the box, totally, people are not going to be interested in it because there's nothing they can relate to. You have to make it palatable for them so they can relate to the characters, the situations, the dynamics between the characters, and then you have to be able to market that in a way that people are used to. So it is a bit more, again, it's going to take a bit of thought, a bit of work, mental work, to not paint everything black and white. It's not just black and white, it's either yes or no. It's not that there's gradations between the two extremes, and sometimes it takes a bit of discernment to figure out where we are on that gradation. And there's nothing else for it. It's not going to fall out the sky and just reveal itself like that. You know?
No, it's not going to do that. It's not wahi. You mentioned about, the gradations, right? And I think there is something to be said for, there's a spectrum, right? There is, Islamic material, all the way Islamic material on one side, and there's completely haram material on the other side, like evil stuff. It's a spectrum, right? And you can probably peg things along that spectrum. There's the middle ground where it's okay. Yani doesn't have that much fa'idah, but doesn't have anything bad. It's okay, There's something there, middle way. Then it gets better and better, or more valuable, whatever the case may be, and then it gets worse and worse. And I think that we as Muslims can place ourselves along that line, and I think it's okay. Not everything needs to be on the far end of Islamic, because you won't meet everyone there.
You won't, no.
And unfortunately with our youth, I think if you are on that side, there's just lots of youth that are just not going to relate, or it's just a different. I want to ask your opinion on this actually. I've seen with my work with authors that there is this desire to compete with superheroes and to place, for example, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the companions as competing superheroes with Spider-Man, Batman, heroes, Thor, whoever, What do you think about that? I have my own thoughts, which I'll share. But
you said you've seen...
People say, basically, our children need to know these people and see them more as superheroes than Thor and Spider-Man, etc. And people thinking about, well, how can we get our kids to be as excited about the companions and the Prophet ﷺ as they are about Spider-Man, Thor and Green Lantern and whoever? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I understand the sentiment. I understand the desire to try to make those characters attractive to a younger audience. I understand that. How you would execute that bearing in mind that we can't show pictures of the Prophet ﷺ, you can't films like The Message, and there was a cartoon that was made a couple of years afterwards as well, produced by an ex-Disney producer. That would probably be the closest thing, but even then you're not going to get the same. Because the minute you put one thing out of place, you're going to get cancelled by the ummah, never mind anybody else. So I can see if anybody wants to try and do that, I mean, even The Message, people criticize The Message left, right and centre. It's this, it's that, they shouldn't show this, they've got music on it, So it's a landmine. I don't know how I agree, yes, we should try and develop that love for them. I think maybe the best way to do it is to stay away from things like that. If you just want to teach the seerah, you can't mythologize it, you can't fictionalize it, you can't you can't make it into something that it isn't.
This is, we are on the same page, because that's my thought. My thought is, it's apples and pears. How are you going to compare Spider-Man with Salman al-Farisi?
No,
what?
you can't.
You can't.
No,
Spider-Man is a fictional character. Exciting and funny he is, right? Amazing visuals, graphics, all storyline, backstory. It's great. That's fiction.
That's fiction,
In your child's mind, that should be clear. That's fiction. I like him as a fictional character. It's cool. He inspires me to do whatever, or I just enjoy his stuff. That's fiction. Salman al-Farisi was real. He was a real person. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are real people. These are figures, religious figures, right? And I just think it's doing too much in a way to try to, well, I don't think it's doing too much. I think it's trying to do the wrong thing. You can't make fiction, especially science fiction,
Yes.
right? Fantasy, science fiction, reality cannot compare
No,
with
can't
that
compete
because
with
this
it,
is the
no.
product of our
Yes.
imagination,
And
right?
it's not just reality; it's a divine reality.
Exactly.
You know, it's sacred.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
So I think I agree. I think you can execute
You can execute it
You
well.
can execute it well. Maybe you could have this kind of
Yeah.
format. You could execute it like that, but
Yeah.
you can't mix
And you
the genres.
shouldn't be trying to compete
No,
because the
no.
plays. I think this is my personal opinion.
Yes.
I think that how we should learn about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is its own thing.
Yes.
That's our messenger from
Yes.
God,
Yes.
who taught us the way, who brought us the Quran. Like, come on, like how, you know, if we've done our job and if Allah has given us tawfiq in our job, then our children understand what that means. It's azim.
Yes.
These comics and stuff is great.
Yeah, it's great, but
But
it's in its own bracket. Yeah,
Right,
yeah, yeah.
subhanAllah. So, Brother Khalid, what is next for you then, inshallah?
For me, it's just doing more, really, because I do a number of things, radio show and stuff like this. But so doing one book, writing it, and then in some cases illustrating it as well, and then designing it.
Right.
Oh, I'm only one person, so it's a lot of work to do. So I'm just trying to work diligently on the ones I'm working on.
Yes.
I'm working on 2 more books at the moment, and I promised myself I'm not going to do anything after that. And I've already broken my own promise. I don't know what I'm talking about after time. So I'm just trying to try and get the books out again, try and get people to be
Inshallah.
interested in it as well. And that's it. It's just more of the same for me, inshallah.
Well, I've really enjoyed our fascinating conversation. I'm sure nobody expected us to be talking Marvel versus DC. I'm sure we will settle the debate next time, inshallah. But for now, I am excited to see the impact that you will have through these books, bi'idhnillah. And as always, audience, what is our dua? That Brother Khalil's books end up on Muslim bookshelves all over the world. Ya Rab, make it so. Jazakallah khairan, brother.
Thank you so much, sister. Jazakallah.
For more inspiring books, check out our weekly reading list. Tales of Mini Maryam by Qasir Abdul Aziz. Wake Up! It's the Ramadan Drama by Maryam Hakim. 1001 Inventions and Awesome Facts from Muslim Civilization by National Geographic Kids. Tune in to join our weekly competition. Just answer the question below and you can win our award-winning book collection. What comic book publisher did Khalil say was his favorite? A. Marvel. B. DC. C. Action Lab Comics. D. Boom Studios. To enter, email tmbs@islamchannel.tv. Terms and conditions apply.